These protesters in Mexico City say cross-border migration is changing their country's capital for the worse. Over the last decade, an influx of mostly American so-called digital nomads have moved here to work remotely and also enjoy a cheaper cost of living. Protesters say the newcomers have driven up rents beyond the reach of locals.
If they're going to live in a country, they have to contribute to that country. The first and simplest issue is legal migration. They come here with visas or no visas, and still the change in purchasing power generates these problems of gentrification and displacement.
I'm here because gentrification is just one more step towards colonization, dispossession, and the exploitation of our resources. Right now it's about the people, but it won't be long before they run out of oil, water, or lithium in other countries and come and take them from us.
Many Americans in Mexico are able to still receive high salaries in dollars from U.S. companies by working on laptops from their apartments.
The government is directing its public policies towards people with higher purchasing power, often illegally displacing local populations who have lived in these neighborhoods for 40, 50, and we have even documented cases of up to 60 years. In 5 years, rents have increased by 47%. This is violent for the local population. We are debating whether to pay for electricity, water, or food. Of course, we choose to eat.
Some activists blame Mexico's government for encouraging them. However, there's no simple fix. Imposing tougher visa restrictions on Americans could worsen relations with the U.S. Mexican citizens in the U.S. also send billions of dollars in remittances back to their families in Mexico. In a world where travel and communication are faster and easier than ever, these two nations are finding it harder to have neighborly relations.
In case you haven't heard, there has been a wave of protests happening in Mexico. It's not about the government, it's not about the crime, it's about Americans, mostly white digital nomads, moving to Mexico, raising the rent, and pushing locals out of their own neighborhoods. What's crazy is some of these Americans are not even tourists. They are full-time remote workers making US salaries, living cheap in Mexico, and basically gentrifying entire areas. The people in Mexico are finally speaking up. They are calling it modern-day colonization. But here is where it gets deeper, because at the exact same time, we've got Mexican immigrants in the US protesting deportations, asking not to be sent back home. So now the question becomes, how can you protest people moving into your own country when some of y'all don't want to go back home? I think a lot of people, especially Black Americans, are watching closely. In this video, we are going to react to some of the most honest, emotional, and controversial TikToks from Latino creators who are speaking out on both sides. And at the end, I will come back and break it all down for you guys to understand what's going on. Because the bigger picture here is about class, displacement, and power. So stay locked in.
Are we, as Mexican-born citizens, coming back to the homeland gentrifiers too? Oh, here I am crying on the internet again. Puro llorar y llorar. It's really just been heavy on my heart, the topic of gentrification, honestly. I'm only gonna share my perspective. I was born in Mexico City to indigenous parents, and at 3 months old, I was brought to the US. I grew up in the Phoenix, Arizona area my whole life. By no choice of my own. I was a baby. My parents did what they had to do at that point in time to provide us a good life. And I'm forever grateful for that. But now, fast forward 30 plus years later, many of us are on the boat of wanting to come back to our homeland, wanting to come back and reconnect with our roots. And I think I was a little naive to think that we would be welcomed by our people with open arms. In my fantasy, it was like, bienvenidos a casa, Karina. Aquí estamos felices que regresaste aquí a tu país y con mucho gusto te vamos a ayudar. I was naive to believe that. Now, a lot of people like us are facing hate from the locals, from people who were born and lived here in Mexico their whole lives. And they call us pochos, they call us gringos, they call us americanos, that we need to go back to the US, that's where we belong and stay over there, that we are gentrifiers, that we are the white man's best friends, and every name under the sun I've been called. And I will say that I've only ever gotten hate online, never in person. And I can lie and say that it doesn't hurt me, that I'm just gonna like brush it off my shoulder and it ain't no thing, but low-key, it does hurt. I could understand the hate from white people, from the gringos that don't want me in the US, who think that that's their land and that I need to go back because I've physically been assaulted, verbally, emotionally, my whole life for being brown in America, and was told to go back to Mexico my whole life. But now that I'm here and amongst my own people who look like me, for them to not accept me or not want me and just reject me, I'm not gonna lie, it hurts, it stings. But I'm also trying to come from a perspective that I know I have privilege having dual citizenship. I know that I have privilege speaking two languages. I know I have privilege that I can earn USD and Mexican pesos. So I'm trying to be empathetic and trying to be understanding and trying to go about it the right way. But I feel like no matter what I do, somebody's not gonna be happy with me, no matter what I do. Like, I'm an indigenous Mexican woman, brown skin, and that's still not good enough. Puedo hablar en español todo el día, but that's not good enough. I can make Mexican pesos, but that's not good enough. I can pay Mexican taxes, still not good enough. So I feel like I'm just constantly having to prove myself, my identity. I've never been American enough for the white people. Now I'm not Mexican enough for the Mexicans. And that's more when it stings. And it's just a constant battle. And some people are gonna say, boo-hoo, like you're crying for nothing, you have privilege. Maybe you're right. But I know that there's a lot of us like me who are in this predicament and don't know how to facilitate this topic. And I could just delete the comments and I could just ignore, the hate. But I thought, you know what? Take this on head on instead of trying to act like it's not a topic of discussion. I want to learn, and when I'm learning, you guys are learning with me, and I've always been raw, open, and honest with my whole journey. Thank you guys for always listening, growing with me, and seeing me with my moco tendido and everything. But yeah, seguimos adelante, and regardless, que viva Mexico.
Gentrification is colonization. Let's talk about it. Recently, there's been protests in Mexico City because of the amount of people from America that have brought over their money and started their own businesses, gentrifying, making everything more expensive in parts of Mexico. Now, of course, there's some people in the comments, like Americans, being like, oh yeah, I guess they also hate when immigrants come here and take their homes and jobs. That's not what gentrification is, Ted. Gentrification is when you bring money from your country into a different country. You raise up the prices of everything because you're buying top-notch houses, you're building businesses, you're trying to basically push people that have lived in that area out of there because you're making everything too fucking expensive. And at the same time, you're going around complaining about the locals and the culture, people being up too late, making noise near your new condo that you bought in your retirement in Mexico. And I think we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more people in Mexico fighting back, pushing back against people in America, whether they're well-intended or not, coming in and doing so. Because if you're going to go into another country, as you guys like to say, you got to assimilate, you got to learn the culture. But for some reason, Americans think that they're the exception. They could go to these places, make their own areas, and that's fine and that's normal. But if hardworking immigrants want to come to America, build jobs, do their own thing, just be a part of their own communities, literally away from you, then they're an issue. But Janice and her husband can come and move somewhere to Mexico because it's so cheap for retirement, and then complain that the restaurant near them that's been there for 3 generations is too loud at night and try to get them shut down. That's gentrification. Now, if Janice and her husband moved there and they understood that things have been around and people have been around there longer than they have, that's not a problem. But Janice and her husband going and try to lease everywhere, build these businesses, not include the actual local community and people, that's not good.
When immigrants like me come to the United States, we don't come to the United States just to buy off property and live off passive income. We come to work. We do the jobs nobody wants. We pay taxes whether we have papers or not. We build things. We respect the country. We contribute. Now compare that to what's happening in Mexico. The tourists or digital nomads, people that work remotely to escape high rents in the States, they are not there to integrate into the community. They live in Mexico, but they still work for U.S. companies getting paid U.S. dollars. They're not paying Mexican taxes. They're not part of the Mexican labor force. Overall, they're just not helping the Mexican economy. If anything, they are draining it. And the worst part is they tell us when we come over here to the United States to learn the language. They go over there, they don't learn the language. They treat the place like a fucking trend. And what ends up happening? They buy up all this property, increasing the value of property for people that have been there, living there, making it unaffordable for the locals in the country. And that's why people are protesting. They don't fucking hate foreigners. They hate the fact of what foreigners are doing, gentrifying the whole place. Everything, the rent's gone up, $2,000 and up. Everything being listed on Airbnb now. So don't say it's the same, because when we come over here, we're not fucking welcomed while contributing so much to the country, and we still get blamed for everything. While tourists that go to all these other countries like Mexico and my country of El Salvador, they get all the perks, while the locals pay the price.
This protest happened on 4th of July in Mexico City, Mexico. Mexican locals protesting gentrification, or in my words, protesting colonization. And I love that they did this on 4th of July. And in the video, you can hear protesters saying, "Fuera gringo," which means get out. And gringo means someone who is from the United States. They are also chanting, "Mi casa no es su casa," which means my house is not your house. Gringos are moving to Mexico while holding a remote United States job. And they're enjoying the cheaper cost of living because obviously they're making money in dollars and spending it in pesos. These colonizers are spiking up the rent where locals are not able to afford housing. In the last 5 years, rent has spiked up by 47%. There was a protester that said that if they are going to live, the gringos, if they are going to live in this country, they need to contribute to this country. And that is so true, because here in the United States, immigrants pay taxes. They contribute to this country. They pay over $100 billion in taxes. The gringos in Mexico are not paying taxes. They make American dollars, US dollars, so they pay taxes to the US, not Mexico. Immigration policies in other countries for US citizens are lenient to non-existent. While here in the United States, as we speak, immigrants are being kidnapped off of the streets and into these concentration camps for profit. Gentrification is just a fancy word. Let's call it what it is. It's colonization. You want closed borders. You laugh and joke and celebrate, saying that you're going to feed the entire Hispanic Latino population here in the United States to alligators, but still come to our countries to colonize our countries. What is it that you say to my people in my community and all immigrants? Why don't you stay in your own country? Why don't you fight for your own country? You're not poor and can't afford rent, food in the USA because of immigrants. The United States isn't unaffordable because of immigrants, because that's why you moved to our countries, right? Because you can't afford to live in the United States. Immigrants are not the ones doing this to you. It's the greedy, rich people here in the United States. It's the greedy corporations. It's the greedy politicians doing this to you. It's the rich ruining this country. The rich here in the United States laugh at you. They think you're dumb. And that's why they lie in your face and laugh behind your back. They lie to you and tell you that it's the immigrant. That because of immigrants, you can't afford life in the United States. They lie to you and say it's because of the immigrant you can't afford food and housing. They laugh at you and lie to you, all the while lining their pockets. The Mexican local population is being illegally displaced so gringos can come and colonize Mexico. People who have lived in their neighborhoods and homes for 40, 50, 60 years being displaced so a gringo can come and colonize. Oh, and let's talk about the audacity U.S. citizens have when they come over to our countries. You want closed borders, you're racist pieces of shit. You come to our country wearing your maggot hat. You don't want to hear our music. You want our restaurants to make the food more bland for you. Because God forbid your food have seasoning. Oh, and get this one. U.S. tourists went to Puerto Rico and started poisoning the Puerto Rican frog, el coqui, because they did not like the noise they made. I am proud of Mexican citizens protesting this colonization. This needs to stop, and other countries need to start protesting colonization as well. If you do not like immigrants and you're a racist piece of shit and want closed borders, then you should not have easy access to our beautiful countries.
You know, the irony that Mexican citizens in Mexico City are protesting American presence in their country. What in the uno reverso? Listen, that's what happens. Don't you think that the timing of it is just ironic? You know, America starts kicking all of the Mexicans out, and then Mexicans are like, no. We want you out of here too, because you're gentrifying our city. And I love that. Because, yeah, you want the benefit. Because believe it or not, a lot of Americans actually live in Mexico illegally. I know, it's crazy. Wow. And so, no, they want tougher legislation on it. And yeah, they're pissed. And I love that for them. So, you fuck around and you find out, you know? So yeah, who would have thought?
It's always laughable to me that white Americans never think that they're gentrifying a place, but that their presence makes the place better versus worse. And in the conversation around the white Americans and the bulk of Americans that are indeed gentrifying Mexico City, people protesting you being there is not at all the same as immigrant folks, migrant folks being in the United States of America. Because let's start with the very real fact that when people immigrate into the United States, they do more with trying to assimilate, to be American, versus trying to make you assimilate into their culture. When the fun part about it is there is no such thing as quote unquote American culture, because the identity of the United States of America in and of itself is stolen. Everything from its food to its music to its people are bagged, borrowed, and stolen. I don't have any sympathy for people that have so much privilege that they can choose a place in which they're going to immigrate to live, be either hosted by their job or self-funded by their work, and also refuse to learn the language, eat the food, and complain about the overall cultural identity of the place when you can just, as I always say, stay your ass home.
Did y'all know they over in Mexico tearing white people's asses up right now? If you don't believe me, you can go look it up. But the Mexicans that are in Mexico are literally coming after people who are claiming to be nomads. You know, all those boomers who have now retired and are looking for a cheaper place to live with their retirement. They decided to go to Mexico and try to gentrify Mexico. And they said, no, sir, no, ma'am. The Mexican people are going through their cities where they've built all these places of shops shops and restaurants, and they are breaking everything. They are blaming this boomer generation and these digital nomads for the reasons why the price of living is going up. They said that over the last 5 years, just rent alone has gone up 43% because of them. They said that because of them, they are now having to choose between groceries, rent, and electricity. And they didn't waste no time telling them, get the fuck out. They even said they was coming on their beaches telling them that their mariachi bands can't play their music. The nerve. That's a cultural thing that's been going on there forever. Why would you think you get to go to someone else's country and tell them what to do? There was even one of the protesters who was quoted stating, this is how colonialism works, and we're gonna put a stop to it before it ever even happens, honey. And they don't look like they're joking around, busting windows straight out, honey.
Hey, yo, those protests in Mexico City, I get it. I understand. I can sympathize with victims of gentrification, but man, you guys are going after the wrong people. It's not the foreigner's fault that there's so much leniency over there for a foreigner to go out there and live remotely or start a business out there. This is clearly a governmental issue. Like, the people that are protesting and actually rioting because you guys are destroying businesses, you guys are going after the wrong people. You guys are making us look bad, and also you guys are making us look dumb too, not gonna lie.
First of all, let us clarify things. Gentrification is not a special case for Mexico. It's happening in many parts of the world. People decide to move from their countries to developing countries where they can be able to get more with their money. Now, it's been happening in African countries, it's been happening in Asian countries. You've been seeing many Black Americans relocating from America to Thailand, from America to Vietnam, from America to some African countries like South Africa, Seychelles, Mauritius, Kenya. So it's not a big deal, especially if these people are moving with no bad intentions. They go there with no bad intentions. They're just going for their own benefit. They're earning in dollars, their jobs are remote. So they think, instead of us staying in America where we are spending much money, why can't we look for a country where you can migrate to and be able to live comfortably by spending less than what we are spending in America? So here is where the problem is. They start making it hard for the locals to get the houses to live in, even to afford apartments which are being built in their own neighborhoods. Another problem that comes with these digital nomads is, after arriving in these countries, they will start businesses, not targeting the locals in that country. They will start targeting their fellow digital nomads or their fellow tourists, because they're the one who will be paying in dollars. And now it's become hard for the locals to be able to buy a thing from the businesses that were started by these digital nomads. Now, I give you some other scenarios for you to understand what's really happening. There is an African country that is known as Angola. And in the early 90s, I guess, if not early 2000s, they discovered petrol in Angola. So after discovering petrol in Angola, it pushed many investors, many foreigners, Americans, Europeans, Chinese, Asians to migrate to Angola so that they can start their businesses. They can start their oil businesses in Angola. They can just start their companies that will be extracting that petrol from Angola. And after migrating there, they started building expensive mansions. They started building expensive apartments for them to be staying in while being in the capital city of Angola, Rwanda. And this made it hard for the citizens of Angola to afford the cost of living in their own cities, because most of the people were living in Rwanda, the capital city of Angola, where Europeans were foreigners. And this pushed many local people in Angola to move out of the capital city to the village. And this has raised the cost of living in the capital city of Angola to the point that few people in Angola can afford that. The same case to African countries like Mauritius and Seychelles. These are African countries, but when you visit this country as an African, you will sense it that the cost of living in those countries is not for Africans. Many people who are living in these countries are either from Europe, they are from America, they are the retired Americans who decided to migrate to those countries, they're the retired Europeans from England who decided to migrate to those countries. And it has made it hard for people in those countries to afford the services and the products that are being sold in their own country. So I understand it when these Mexicans are protesting about what's happening in their own country. So now, here is the interesting part. While Mexicans in Mexico are protesting Americans moving there, some Mexicans in America are protesting deportation. So which way is it? You don't want Americans in Mexico, but you also don't want to return to Mexico. I want you to understand this. Of course, there are Mexicans in America who are protesting deportations. Now, here's the difference. These Mexicans in America migrated to America in search of a better life. In America, they do those low-paying jobs. They earn money, they pay taxes to the American government. But when it comes to these digital nomads living in Mexico, they are earning money in dollars, they are working for American companies remotely, and they're not paying any tax to the Mexican government, which means that they're not making any contribution to the development of Mexico, and that's where the problem is. Now, I want us to be real. This is not about white versus brown. It's about the global rich versus global working class. The problem is not just Americans in Mexico. It's the capitalism with no borders. Instead of protesting against these digital nomads, I think Mexicans would rather protest against capitalism. They would rather protest against their own government that is not bringing them opportunities to be able to earn money. I think that's the best way of addressing this issue. And I also think that this kind of protest is going to raise the tension between black and brown people in America. And I want you all to understand this. This is not just about Mexico. It's about power, poverty, and who gets to belong. It's a reminder that if you don't build your own systems, someone else will build them over you. It's what's happening in Mexico, and it's even what's happening in many African countries. I want you guys to let me know what you think about this video. Do you really support these Mexicans protesting in Mexico? Are you against their protest? Let me know what you think down there in the comment section. And that was it for today. Mr. TA signing off. Ciao.